Hello, my dear students. Hello, my dear students. Welcome to our first live session of physics. And today we will be talking about the human eye and the colorful world. I'm sure in the previous chapter of refraction and reflection of light, you must have studied about various mirrors and lenses and also learnt about what kind of images does a mirror forms, or a convex or a concave mirror forms, or what type of images the lenses form. Now we will extend the knowledge of our previous chapter and we will apply that knowledge in this chapter. So to begin with, let's first discuss as to what is human eye, how does a human eye function. Now, the function of human eye is basically to capture things which are around us. It helps us to see various different colors in bright light as well as in dull light, right? So basically, how does a human eye helps us to see various colors or various objects around us? So human eye has got these two very important cells which are called as the rod cells and the cone cells, right? So the rod cells and the cone cells. What are rod cells? Rod cells are basically the cells. These two, first of all, these two cells are called as photoreceptor cells, right? The rod cells helps us to see in dim light, and the cone cell helps us to see in very bright light. For example, suppose we are playing outside. So what is the kind of cell that will help us to see outside? The cone cells. Suppose we enter in a dark room. So when we are entering in a dark room, the rod cells will start to activate. They will become active and they help us to see in dim light. So these are the two main important cells which are available in our eye, especially near this retina region, on this retina, and it helps us to see, during bright and during dull light. Now let's move forward. As you know that, if just like a camera, how do we click pictures with the help of a camera? A normal camera has got a lens, okay, and it has got a screen on which our image is formed. Just like the camera, very similar to how a camera works. Our eyes, they function just like the cameras. Our eyes have got a lens which is a convex lens, which we will study in a few minutes from now, and it has got a screen on which the image is formed. So you can say that the human eye perfectly works just like a camera, and I would say that human eyes are the perfect cameras. We are able to perceive any object or any scene in front of us very close to its originality, very close to its original being, right? Let's now move on to discussing the structure of the eye. Okay, now this the circle that you see here, this huge spherical, this circular this body that you see here, this is your complete eye. And what is the diameter of this eye? Approximately the diameter of our eye is 2.3 centimeter. So 2.3 centimeter is the diameter of our human eye. Now human eye has got various parts. To show you the first part, let's first talk about cornea. Okay, so cornea is here, as you see. Let me just enlarge this eye. So this is the cornea. What is cornea? Now cornea is the first layer of our eyes, right? We are not able to see the cornea because it is transparent in color, and this is the first layer. So this first very lightish gray color thin line that you see here right in front of the eye is what is cornea, and it is a transparent membrane. Okay, it is a transparent spherical membrane which is covering the eye. What does it do basically? What is the function of cornea? Because it is transparent in nature, any light which is entering from the front, any light which enters like this into the eyes, first it passes through the cornea, and because when the light is coming, it is coming through the air, it is coming from the air and it enters into the cornea. So there is a change in the medium. Now the light is which is traveling from the air, which is traveling through the air, suddenly encounters a change in the medium. What is the change in the medium? Now it is some transparent medium that it comes across, right? So there is a change in the medium, and we have studied in the previous chapter that whenever there is a change in the medium, the light is going to be refracted and not reflected. It is going to be refracted, right? So the light enters the first refraction at this cornea. So what is the function of cornea? Cornea allows the light to first get refracted, and then the light will be incident on, it travels inside and it is incident on the lens. So that is the function of cornea. Next is crystalline lens. I already told you that our eyes, it has got a lens. The lens is convex in shape, and it is a transparent, soft, flexible. It is made up of a transparent material. It's a jelly-like material. It's basically protein, which helps to focus the image. So if somebody asks you what is the function of crystalline lens, you will say it helps to focus the image on the retina. Its function is to simply focus the light ray which is coming from outside. The light ray which is coming from outside, it helps in focusing that light onto the retina, onto the screen, right? Now let's move forward and discuss what is iris. Now this is how the iris looks like. I will enlarge this picture for you so that you are able to see it clearly. And what is iris? See, the center black dot that you all have in your eyes is called as pupil, right? This is the pupil. Next to the pupil, this tissue-like structure that you see, which is in this case light brown in color, this tissue-like structure is what is called the iris. Now sometimes we say, okay, his or her eyes are light brown in color, cat-eyed, cat eyes, or bluish green eyes or green eyes. So what is that color of the eye that we're talking about? The color of the eye is nothing but it is the color of the iris. So it is the iris which gives the eye its color, right? So if your eyes are black, that means your iris is black. If your eyes are green, that means your iris is green. If your eye is cat eye, that means it is the iris which gives the cat eye color, right? So it's basically a dark muscular diaphragm which is between the cornea and the lens, and it has got one more function. Other than just giving the color to the eye, it has got one more function, which is to control the size of the pupil. What do I mean? Now if you clearly look here, the pupil is right in the center, and covering the pupil, is iris. So iris basically controls the size of the pupil. And why do we need to control the size of the pupil? Is exactly this. Why do we need to control pupil? See, sometimes when we enter a bright light from a dark room, when we come out in a bright room, what happens? We suddenly keep our hands on the eyes and we try to close our eyes because we don't want so much of light entering into our eyes because it would affect our eye, right? So suddenly what happens is when we come out in the bright light, the pupil shrinks, the pupil contracts. Contract means it becomes very small. This pupil which is right in the center, the black one, the black structure that you see on the screen. So the pupil wants to contract because it wants to close so that not so much of light should not enter into the eyes and damage the lens. That's why it wants to close. Now what helps this pupil to close? It is the iris here which controls the pupil, right? So what is the main function of pupil? The main function of pupil is to control the amount of the light that is entering the eye. So pupil controls the amount of the light entering the eye. And what controls the pupil? The iris controls the pupil, right? So this is what is pupil. Now I'll just show you once more, what happens in dim light and what happens in bright light? So when you enter in bright light, your pupil, this black dot, will actually become very small if you look closely, because it wants to shrink so that not much light can enter your eyes and harm your lens. But in dim light, it wants to actually widen up. The pupil will become large because it now wants that more and more light should enter into the eye, because he's finding it difficult to see. So when more light enters the eye, in any dark room, he or she or any person will be able to see clearly. So that is how the pupil changes its size, becomes sometimes small, sometimes large, in order to accommodate the light and allow us to see what is there in a bright room or a dark room. Okay, now next what we're going to talk about is the ciliary muscles. Very, very important role they have to play with regards to the seeing of the surroundings. What are ciliary muscles? So look at what are these are the muscles, see, on both the sides of the lenses, on the top side here and on the bottom somewhere here. These are the ciliary muscles. So what do? These ciliary muscles actually hold the lens properly. And what is the function of ciliary muscles? The ciliary muscles will contract and they will expand depending upon where do we want to see. So from both the sides, you have to understand that from both the sides they're holding the cells tightly, the lens tightly. Okay, they're holding the lens tightly. Now how do they function is what we are going to learn here. Look at this. Now just look at this first diagram on the left first. Understand that. So where are the ciliary muscles here? On this side, that is here on one end here, and on the other end here, the ciliary muscles are now resting. Okay, when the ciliary muscles are at rest, when they are relaxed, when they are not doing anything, then the lens is in normal position, that is the lens is thin. When the ciliary muscles are relaxing, when they are not doing anything, that means the lens is thin, the size of the lens is thin. Okay, and if the lens is thin, now look at this end is actually where the retina is, right? And the distance between the lens and this retina is nothing but this is the focal length. So what will happen? The focal length here will be more as compared to the second case. Now look at the second case. In second case, now the muscles are not relaxing, but what the muscles are doing, the muscles are trying to contract. How will the muscle contract? The muscles will contract and try to come close to each other by pressing this lens inwards, inside from the two ends. So I'll repeat exactly what they are doing. The muscles are not relaxing right now, but the muscles are contracting. How do the muscles contract? The muscles will contract by pushing this lens inwards from both the direction. So from both the ends where they are holding the lens, they will try to push the lens inside. What will happen when they try to push the lens inside? When they try to push the lens inside, then the lens becomes bigger and thicker. It will become more thicker as compared to what it was in the first case. Now if the lens become thicker, look at this length, look at this focal length, this would become smaller because the lens is now eating up that much of space, right? So the focal length would become smaller. And what happens when the focal length becomes small? It helps you to see close by objects. So how do you have to remember? If the focal length is large, it helps you to see far away objects. If the focal length of the eye, if the focal length becomes very small, then it helps you to see the close by object. So this is what you have to remember. So in very short, to tell you what is the rule, this is the rule. Look at this. If the muscles are relaxed, that means the lens is thin. If the lens is thin, that means the focal length increases. If the focal length increases, it helps us to see distant objects very clearly. But on the other hand, look at this. If the muscles contract, then the lens becomes thick If the lens becomes thick, the focal length decreases. If the focal length decreases, it helps us to see the objects which are nearby. So this is what you have to remember. So when we are seeing something very, very close by, which means now the lens is thick, right? The muscles are contracting. Now, so this is very important, which you have to remember. Next is retina. We have to now talk about retina, and I already told you that retina is nothing but retina is the screen of the eye. Retina is a place where the eye forms its image, right? And retina has got two types of photoreceptor cells, rods and cones. Very important. Rods helps us to see in dim light, as I already informed you, and cones, they help us to see in bright light, right? And basically these are the cells which will generate those visual signals. Okay, they receive the information in visual form. So suppose you're looking at a tree, then the rods and the cones will help the eye to receive a visual picture, a visual image, right? So that is the retina. Next is optic nerve. Okay, what does the optic nerve does? Optic nerves basically transmits whatever the visual information is received by the retina. Now eyes will receive only visual information, but how do we understand that I'm viewing a tree? How does my brain understand that I'm viewing a tree, or I'm seeing a tree and not a person? I'm seeing a person and not a joker, or whatever it is, right? This job of transforming the visual information into electrical signals is done by the optic nerve. So optic nerve is right here. This path that you see here is the path of the optic nerve. And what does the optic nerve does? The optic nerves basically transforms or converts this visual information which is received by the retina, and it transforms it into electrical signal. So from visual signals, visual information, to electrical signals is what is done by the optic nerve, right? So, and then the optic nerve takes all the information to the brain. Now next is blind spot. So blind spot, as the name suggests, what is blind spot? Blind spot is basically a spot where there is no image formed. Why is that there is no image formed? Is because there are no rods and cone cells available at this point. There are no rods or cones available at this point. Nothing is available. So no image will be formed. Where are these cells placed? These cells are placed only at the retina. There are no cells at the blind spots. So that means no image will be formed. By mistake, suppose if the light which is entering from outside the eyes, it enters the eye, and due to some defect, let's say if the image is, suppose if it is something like, let me just show you something like this. If there is, let's say, the image, the light rays comes here, something like something like this, and let's say another image I will show you. I will insert another image. Suppose from the outside the light ray comes here, and they are meeting at the blind spot. Then what? Suppose these two rays are meeting at the blind spot instead of meeting at the retina. So what will happen? Nothing is going to happen. There is no image which will be formed here, right? So that's why if the light ray has to fall on the retina, that is a normal eye. Okay, so that is the function of blind spot, or you can say that it has got no function as the image formation is concerned. There is no function of blind spot. Now next we're going to talk about is aqueous humor. What is aqueous humor? Now it is again a transparent liquid which exists between this the cornea here, which is the first layer of the human eye, the cornea, and the lens. So in between you see this space which is here, this space, that space is known as your aqueous humor. Now it is again a liquid material, a transparent liquid material. So what it does is, any light ray which is entering from outside, from here, the light ray enters and the first refraction it undergoes is at the cornea, right? The second refraction it undergoes is with the help of the aqueous humor, right? So here the second refraction, the light ray undergoes the second refraction, because again it's a change in the medium, right? The mediums are changing. From the air it enters the cornea, then from the cornea again the light ray passes through the aqueous humor. So there is a change in the medium, right? Because there's a change in the refractive indexes, right? So it's just a transparent liquid which is called as aqueous humor, which helps the light to get refracted. Okay. Next, what we're going to talk about is, now that we know what are the various functions of human eye, we must also learn how the image is formed and what kind of image is formed by the human eye. Now, as we have studied in the previous chapter of light refraction and reflection, we know that a convex lens always forms a real and an inverted image, right? So the same thing applies, to our human eye also. Now, as you see here, it's a toy which is kept right in front of the eyes. So the two light rays enters the eye like this. So the first refraction occurs here at this cornea. You can see the cornea here. Then this is the light blue color that you see here is the aqueous humor. So you can see the light is bending. The light is bending at the cornea. Then the light is bending at the aqueous humor. And again, when it enters the lens, you can see that what kind of image is formed. It forms an inverted image, just like what we studied in the case of convex lenses, right? It forms an inverted image at the retina. So this is the retina here, right? And then this image is converted into this visual form into the electrical signals, and those electrical signals will then be transferred to the brain with the help of optic nerve, right? Now, one more example is, suppose you're seeing a tree in front of you. So look at this. How does the image forms on the retina? What kind of image is formed? An inverted image is formed at the retina, right? And this image is then converted from its visual form into its electrical form, into its something like electrical signal, and which will be transferred to the brain. Now you must be wondering as to, if it is an inverted image which is formed at the retina, then why is that our brain doesn't see? Why don't we see things inverted? Why do we still see image upright? Because our image that is formed on the retina is inverted anyways. So now that job of uprighting or correcting the inverted image to an upright image is done by the brain through its interpretation process, which is absolutely very, very complicated, right? The job of correcting the inverted image is done by the brain. And this part of the brain right now at this stage for you is not very important for you to understand, because it's too very complicated, right? So just understand that whatever inverted image is formed on the retina, that inverted image will be converted from visual form to the electrical signals, and it will be taken to the brain with the help of the optic nerve, and uprighting that image will be done by the brain itself. Now, the next thing that we are going to talk about is the power of accommodation of the eyes. What is this power that we are talking about? Now, we all know that our eyes have got the ability to change the shape of the lens, as we discussed earlier in the case of ciliary muscles. We talked about it, right? We spoke as to how the ciliary muscles can relax at their own positions and can make the lens thin and increase the focal length and helps us to see the distant objects. Also, how the ciliary muscles can contract and push the lens inside from the two ends and decrease the focal length and help us to see the nearby objects. So we studied that. So what is happening? The eye is able to contract and expand. The ciliary muscles are able to contract and expand and change the shape of the lens and help us to see the closer objects, which is as close as 25 centimeters clearly, and as far as infinity, you know. So the power of accommodating things which are as close as 25 centimeter and as far as infinity, this power of accommodating and focusing on the object is known as power of accommodation. Our eyes have the ability or the property to focus the nearby objects as well as the distant objects by adjusting the focal length. So this power of the eye is known as the power of accommodation by the eyes. Now, at this point of time, I would like to introduce to you some two important points that are very, very effective, and it will help you to understand the later concepts in this chapter. The first is the near point. What is a near point and what is a far point? Near point is basically a point which is closer to our eyes, at which we are able to see or perceive the objects very, very clearly. Suppose if I just understand that if I keep any book or any diary or any written text very close to my eyes, very close, just near to my nose, okay, in front of my eyes, will we be able to read the text clearly? I'm sure all of you will answer no, because we need a certain comfortable distance around, in front of our eyes, so as to read any text comfortably. So what is that distance? That distance is 25 centimeter. So we say that 25 centimeter is a very comfortable distance at which each one of us will be able to read comfortably. So 25 centimeter is a near point. Anything nearer to 25 centimeter, it will we'll have problems in reading the text. So what is near point? It is a point or the least distance of very clear vision, distinct vision, which is very near to our eyes. What is far point? On the other hand, far point is a point which is very far from our eyes, which we are able to see clearly. And what should that point be? That point can be any point, any distance away from us, maybe infinity. If there is no obstruction in front of us, maybe we can see as far as possible, right? So that is infinity. So there are 2 points which you should always be very clear about. One is near point and another one is far point. Okay, with that information, this persistence of vision is another small topic that we would study today and end our video session with this topic. I'm sure you must have all studied in your class 8, basically the CBSE. So what is persistence of vision? Now this game also I'm sure you must have played. You take a card and draw a small bird on one side and draw a small cage on the other side of the card. And if you flip the card quickly, what do you see? How do you perceive the picture? You eventually will end up seeing a bird in a cage, right? So why does it happen like that? Because the time for which our eye is able to store the image in our brain is about 1/16th of a second. That is the minimum time for which we should be viewing an object. Okay, we are able to understand that this is an object that we are seeing. Now suppose if we flick the pictures faster than this time, then our brain will get confused and we end up thinking that we are seeing both the pictures together at the same time, and that's why we feel that the bird is inside the cage, right? So this is what is called as persistence of vision, which means now if we are seeing the cage, our brain has still restored the picture of the bird. Now quickly when we switch over to the bird, the brain has still restored the picture of the cage. So what we feel, our brain understands that probably both the pictures are existing at the same time and we see the bird in the cage, right? So that is persistence of vision. In this chapter, we also have a lot of eye defects and defects in the vision, which we will be doing probably in the next video session. So that's all for this video session. In case you